Hi everybody, welcome to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Durling and thank you for watching once again. On this episode I am going to go through the CD collection that I have. One of my favorite Canadian bands, April Wine. I've never gotten around to doing a CD episode on them before. We're going to take care of that right now. First thing I want to mention is, so I don't have to go through them every time I come to the CDs, when you're talking about April Wine's albums, primarily what we're talking about are the albums that they released between 1971 and 1985. Those were their main recording and touring years, initially anyway. And if you're a fan of the band that got into them in the late 70s in the US, you might be surprised to find out how many albums that they actually had. Not all of their albums were released internationally, but they were one of the biggest acts that were on a Canadian label called Aquarius. Now, I can't say that they've done the best job with reissuing the April Wine catalog, although there is another company that kind of took up the slack much later. There's 3 years in the early 90s where Aquarius reissued the bulk of the April Wine catalog. 1991, very bare bones, no inner sleeves, no pictures, nothing, hardly anything. There were a few that happened in 1992, not much better, but a little bit as far as credits. And then the majority of them came out in 1993, where they did reproduce some of the original photographs and back covers and things of that nature. But what I don't like about those, and I'll mention this a few times, is that they don't feature the original release date on them, and I think that's important. So for a great band, one of the biggest bands to come out of Canada, it was a long time before their albums got the treatment that they deserved in the CD age. Also, the fact that the big sticking point for me is the fact that they put 3 live albums out in that time period, and they didn't exist on CD for a long time. So let's get into it. First album came out in 1971 with one of the worst album covers ever. The infamous Feet album cover, first April Wine. And this is, of course, an Aquarius issue from the 1993 issues. They do reproduce the cover of the band, or the picture of the band that was on the back cover. No original release date listed. So, the disc itself, you'll see a few that look like this. It just says down there on the bottom. It's glaring really bad. But just says 1993 Aquarius Records. It should say 1971, or at least 1971, to 1993. And on the inside, they all have all of this particular issue, the complete April Wine studio album collection. Studio is to indicate none of the live albums are there, so here we go. So I guess that lets you know what maybe you're missing if you didn't know, if you didn't have the original vinyl and you were a later fan getting into them, like me. Anyway, that's that one. Second album, 1972 on record. This is one that came out also in the 1993 reissues. It's white on the side this time, and they reproduced the back cover, which is, that's not bad. But again, the CD itself just says 1993. This has a little bit more in it for credits, but to be fair, the original albums, these early ones, didn't have a lot for credits in them anyway. Same thing inside here, the rest of the albums. So 1973, Electric Jewels. Once again, this is the 93 reissue on Aquarius, which was distributed in Canada I think it was originally distributed by London Records, and they switched to Capitol for most of that time period. Reproducing the back cover quite well, right down to the calligraphy. At least they didn't use just a generic font for that. CD looks exactly the same as all the ones we've seen so far. A little bit of credits, and once again. So, it wasn't until, I think 2008 or 2009 that a company called Unidisc started reissuing, they kind of got the rights to a bunch of different labels, Aquarius being one of them, Mirage Records being another one. So you started seeing some reissues on digipacks, which is not my favorite thing, but it was all worth it to finally start to get the live albums. So this is the first April Wine live album, just called Live, or Live exclamation point, or Live Play Loud, or whatever you want to call it. So this was a good thing to get. finally. Personalization on the side. They did a good job with these Unidisc reissues, so I'm really happy about that. They even used the old Aquarius logo on here. Very raw, very raw live album. This was recorded, I believe, well, it was all over Canada. I thought it was mostly in Halifax, but I know some of it was. Not bad with the treatment for this one. I was kind of happy. I was very happy to get this. Okay, so the first of the 1991 reissues, which as far as I can tell, they only reissued 2 albums. The first really big April Wine album in Canada was Stand Back. This is a pretty common one. If you've looked at enough, used record places and stuff like that, especially in Canada, you'll see this one. So there you go. Just the song titles on the back. 1991 Aquarius Records. Not 1975 as it should be. That's what the disc itself looks like. And just that single sleeve with the song titles on it. Little tiny bit of credits on the bottom. Photography, the design, production. Just a single sleeve here. Not great. 1976, Whole World's Going Crazy. This is one of the 93 issues. These ones are the best of them for sure. I kind of wish they'd have waited and done them all like this. And really, my only quibble with these is they don't have the original release date. So if you didn't know when these originally came out, and you were a new fan, prior to the internet, you might not even have known what order to put these in. Some credits on the back. So yeah, not bad. One of the albums that wasn't released in the US, 1977, Forever for Now. There's reasons for this, and I go into those on some of my previous April Wine episodes, my extensive cassette one, a couple of vinyl ones that I've done. I explained what this album was all about. This is a 93 issue on Aquarius, using the materials that were given originally with the album. Same. I feel like I gotta keep showing that. Next up's the second April Wine Live album. So we're back to the Unidisc reissues. Live at the El Macambo. Now what I like about this too is that this combines the track listings for the Canadian Aquarius issue and the US issue on London Records, because London Records issued The Whole World's Going Crazy and this. Those are the only 2. So the songs that were missing from the Canadian one and vice versa, they're all here. So I think that to me shows they put some time into this. This Unidisc company knows what they're doing, so I'm really happy about that. And they reprinted the imagery from inside, and the actual disc itself is pretty cool. Versus just got the album cover on it. So now I'm starting to get into territory that's a little bit rare as far as the CD issue. 1978, first international April Wine album. They signed with Capitol Records, where they would have their biggest success in the world. First Glance. Not the easiest one to find. This is a used copy on Capitol Records. This is an 80s issue. It wasn't reissued. So there you go. And now I previously had the Canadian copy of this, and when I got this, I didn't need it anymore, but I did keep the sleeve that came with it. That's the original Canadian cover, so quite a bit different. Really common one in Canada. You see this a lot. This is the only other one that I know of from the 91 issues. It's their original 1979 Greatest Hits album. And like Stand Back, it just has the song titles. It says 1991, disc, and just song titles written here. And this one's not a booklet, it's just a single square here. One of the big April Wine albums, one of their best, and to this day one of the easiest ones to find now. 1979, Harder Faster. I have a US Capitol version of that. Great album. There were a couple of issues of this. I think the only difference is that the CD looks a little bit different, but this is a later one. I like what they did with the disc itself. There's the photo from the back cover. There were no lyrics that came inside of this, so we're not missing much. There's the inner sleeve photo and the song titles again. Of course, April Wine's one, the biggest album of their career, 1981, Nature of the Beast. This is a U.S. Capitol version. This is the easiest one to find out. This is the one that stayed in print in the U.S. This one and Harder, Faster. The rest of them were deleted, unfortunately. I like what the Capitol did with the CD itself. That's pretty cool. The logo on there, and looks really good. The red and the orange and the yellow, very keeping in with the whole album cover. And this one actually has some guts in here. They reproduce all the credits and all the lyrics. So yeah, not a bad job on this one. Also in 1981, and this was another Canadian-only release, Aquarius put out the Best of April Wine rock ballads. And curiously, I guess there were 4 series of issues, but this came out on CD in 1990, so this predates the other reissues. So that's what the album looks like there. I think it's actually called the Best of April Wine rock ballads. It's a cumbersome title. They actually shortened it to rock ballads, which is cool. There aren't as many songs on here as there were on the original album. Not that it matters, because there's nothing, there was nothing unreleased on here. I think the original record had 14 tracks. This has 10. But, this is kind of a whatever issue. This is a Canadian issue on Aquarius Capitol. So the next April Wine album, 1982, Power Play. This is one that was released in the States, but I don't have that copy of it. This is one of the handful that was done in 1992 by Aquarius. So there's the front cover, and that's the side. So there's all the credits on the back here, which is good, and that's about all there was, other than the back cover photo. This is just a single cardboard, or whatever you want to call it, paper sleeve here. But what's interesting about this one is that instead of using the original Aquarius number, that Q2 48417, 48417 is the Capitol US CD issue. So I'm not sure why they did that, but yeah, other than Harder, Faster and Nature of the Beast, if you can find any of the Capitol CDs, they're quite rare, including the next one I have to show you, which I was really surprised to find, 1984 Animal Grace. This is easy enough to find in Canada, but this is a US Capitol version, which is pretty cool, because this album didn't even certify gold in the States. So this is something that wasn't reissued, so I just happened to find this, So it pays if you're an April Wine fan, and even if you've got the CDs, if you just see the front cover, look at the disc itself, see where it came from. It might be worth picking up. So the disc itself, typical Capitol of the time. And it just reprints, doesn't reprint the lyrics, but it's got the credits in here. And the third live album to come out from April Wine was 1985, and for a long time this eluded me on everything except Cassette, pardon me. Coffee break. My favorite of their live albums, One for the Road. This is a Unidisc issue. Yeah, until this came out, this was not available on CD, sort of. Not in and of itself. And I'll explain what I mean by that. I love how they do the personalization on the side here. I don't know why they didn't use their actual logo on here. They've got like a domino thing happening. This also has songs added to it that weren't on the original issue, which is really cool. There's actually, I think 4 songs on here that weren't on the original issue. So that tells me they got access to the master tapes, which I might as well say it. No, I'll wait and say it later. My gripe about that. There you go. There wasn't much in this to begin with, but glad to have it. So the final album that they did for Capitol in the States, 1985, Walking Through Fire. Very hard to find. I don't have the Capitol version of that. This is the Canadian Aquarius issue from the 93 issues. They actually carried the theme onto the side here. It's like sometimes they decided to do extra, sometimes they didn't. That's reprinted from the back cover. The font's different. And no surprise on the disc itself. And the little bit of credits that there was, and for the last time, all of these ones here. So, late 80s, I think between 1987 and 89, we're into the CD age now. So Capitol Records in Canada started putting out issues called Over 60 Minutes With, and they did no less than 3 for April Wine. First one is just simply called The Hits, and they couldn't even be bothered to get a new photo of the band. They used the same picture that's on the US First Glance and the Canadian Greatest Hits, so it's easy to get this one confused. This one is newer. This one goes all the way up to 1985, and you know, pretty good compilation if you're starting out with them. Maybe not the best. A little bit of personalization on the disc itself. This is actually a Canadian Columbia House issue, and a breakdown of who played on what, even though there are some mistakes here, because they don't mention the other musicians that played on Walking Through Fire, and they list the, you know, Gary Moffat, Steve Lang, and Jerry Mercer as being with the band through '85, which we know is not true. So a little sloppy there. Next one, and a good companion to this, a perfect companion to this, actually, is called All the Rockers. But again, lazy on the cover. They just reused this shot from Nature of the Beast. But it's pretty hard to argue with this track selection. This is the heaviest April Wine songs. It's a good compilation. I really like it. Looks about the same, the disc itself. And this one actually has a little bit of a write-up on the band, which is somewhat useful. You know, it's kind of too short to be of any real use, but just for a general overview of their career to this point, not bad. Probably the one that had the most work put into it came out in 1989. It's called The First Decade, and as you may guess, this is all songs from the 70s, including some unreleased songs, none of which I think are all that great, and there were more unreleased songs that they could use. As a matter of fact, April Wine has at least 5 studio songs that were B-sides of some of their singles that have never been issued on CD. This would have been a good place to do it. The next thing I'm going to show you would have been a better place to do it. There's the disc. And you know, it's the first decade, so I don't understand why it's all 80s era photos. But anyway, a little write-up. This is useful because it does explain where some of these unreleased songs came from. But okay, so 1991, Aquarius puts out a box set. You know, record companies put out box sets. The April Wine collection came in this little box here. I think it's been issued in different forms since then. This has 4 discs. Now let me break the discs down for you. Volume 1 is the singles, okay, which is essentially this, Volume 2, the rock songs, which is essentially this. Vintage Wine, which is essentially this, plus a few 80s songs. No unreleased songs whatsoever. The only one that was remotely useful on here, for someone that already had all the albums, is called Live. There are 15 tracks on this disc. The first 11 are the One for the Road album, right in its entirety. And the rest of them are mixed songs from Live and Live at the Alma Combo, which had never been on CD before. So, to me, this is a big fail. And each of the discs, well, they all look like that. Not great, not great. Now, the most useful part, for information's sake, is the booklet that came with it. And there were actually 2 versions of this. There's 2 completely different booklets that were written for this. And one of them matches the album covers as shown, one of them does not. This one does not. Big fail, I think, on the part of Aquarius. They, you know, should put out those B-sides. Still to this day, I wish somebody would, you know. I'm surprised Unidisc hasn't. So anyway, in the early 90s, April Wine reunite. They'd been on hiatus since 1985. Came back with what I think is a great album, Attitude. And this is 1993. This was on FRE, or Flood Ross Entertainment. It was distributed by EMI. This copy I have is a Canadian Columbia House. It was never issued anywhere else, although it did sell well in the US as an import, well enough that the song That's Love actually hit the mainstream rock charts in the States, which is pretty impressive for an indie release. This album went gold in Canada. They, you know, it was a comeback they never really capitalized on for whatever reason, but they've always, you know, they're just perennial road dogs in Canada. Photo of the band, and their sort of a reconstituted lineup. There's no lyrics inside of this, just a bigger photo. They followed it up quite quickly, just 1 year later, which is pretty unheard of in the 90s, with a follow-up album called Frigate. This album didn't do as well, although I think it's almost of equal quality as Attitude. Maybe they could have waited a little bit longer, but again, this is the second of the 2 they did for FRE. This was the first time I saw the band in concert. Actually met the band too. 3 of them. Nothing much inside here, just a little bit of credits and photo of the group. At that point I was thinking they were going to start issuing albums on a fairly regular basis, and I couldn't have been more wrong. The next thing that came out was in the late 90s, mid to late 90s, the King Biscuit Flower Hour, which was a syndication company that played all kinds of different concerts by all kinds of different artists, and I remember hearing them on Sunday nights. They started reissuing some of the concerts they had in their archive on CD. There's Triumph, there's Deep Purple, there's a lot of them. But I was surprised when I walked into a record store and saw this, King Biscuit. It's a concert from November 21st, 1982, so they would have been on the Power Play tour, band maybe at their peak. Really good show here. Some abstract artwork here that has nothing to do with the band. They had nothing to do with putting this out. But there's a pretty good write-up here of the band and some quotes from Miles Goodwin himself. So this is worth picking up if you're a fan of that era, which was their most popular era. They did release another studio album in 2001 called Back to the Mansion. And this was on a company called Civilian Records, which went into business, you know, within a few years of that. I don't know how easy this one is to find nowadays. I got it when it first came out. Kind of cool, the disc itself. They did some customization there. And, you know, credits and a pretty cool live shot of the band. They followed that up with the only other thing that came out on Civilian, was called Greatest Hits Live 2003, 2-disc set, and had 2 new studio songs on it. I actually didn't buy this until I saw them in 2005. April Wine has the distinction of being the band I've seen more than any other. I've seen them 5 times. This is a pretty good track selection, actually. They go kind of deep. They do The Band Has Just Begun, like Lover Like Song, Come Hear the Band. Yeah, not bad. Disc 1 and Disc 2. Let's see what's in here for. Yeah, not much else inside of it. And so far, and probably will remain, the newest April Wine studio album came out in 2006. A very bare bones album, very short album called Roughly Speaking. This was the last thing that Jim Clench played on before he sadly passed away in 2010. This was released on DEP distribution, which was, well, DEP distribution, but it was also put out through Universal of Canada, so it did get into some stores. Very bluesy album. I don't mind it. I wish that it was a little bit longer. And I wouldn't mind hearing some more from April Wine. I mean, since then, Miles Goodwin's put out a couple of blues albums, both of which I reviewed, but here's the inside of Roughly Speaking. So there you go. Not the easiest band to get their CDs from, but it's worth it, because it's good stuff. That's my April Wine CD collection. Thanks for watching Tim's Final Confessions.